Hi, Stephanie.
Hello.
So glad to get together with you. I was really looking forward to being here
Good.
today because we love you guys. We love your company. Just for everyone else, my dog lovers, Stephanie's from Dog Games, and she's the trainer for the company. Dog Games is the company that makes the harnesses that we like perfect fit. We actually don't like them, we love them. I can't even whenever I forget my harness somewhere and I have to use another harness, which I always do because I don't use a collar, period. I feel like some a part of me is missing. Like it's just like I get so used to it. So we are here today because I'd like to ask you tons of questions, not only from me, but also from our dog lovers, from our community. And we'll start maybe about you and your company and how it all started.
Sure, yeah. Um, the company Dog Games started as predominantly just behavior and training. And it was run by Sally Hopkins, and she used to run basically fun dog games in training classes. And actually, that was the first time I met Sally when I got my puppy, Paco, about 10 years ago. And anyway, fast forward, Sally actually wanted to invent a harness purely with dogs' welfare in mind, something super comfortable and safe, basically. And that kind of all kicked off in 2004. And cut a long story short, there's been loads of trials and tribulations along the way, loads of product modification and tweaks. And sort of here we are today with the Perfect Fit harness. And we have a great team. There's 11 of us here at our HQ, which is in the Malvern Hills in the UK. And we are busy shipping harnesses all over the world. And to wonderful people like yourself who share really important the same ethos as us.
Thank you so much. As everything else, it just starts with passion. Everything that is meaningful starts with passion. I'm not sure whether you know, you probably don't, but I've been actually looking for the right harness, for the perfect harness for at least 10 plus years. And every time I put another one on, I go, oh man, it's pinching in the armpit, or it doesn't fit. It's, it just, dogs are different bodies, and it just didn't work. So when I found this harness, and it was actually one of my friends, a chiropractor from Quebec, from Quebec. She's an amazing dog chiropractor, and she says, you should look at this harness. So I did, and since then, we just can't really get enough of it. And I also love that you kind of customize the harness. Can you tell me a little bit about so the harness started as a result of trying to train dogs and so on, and you're a dog trainer. I'm a dog trainee, meaning that I actually am trained to train my dog. And it's been always, like, really seriously, I think that the leash work has been the most difficult one, because dogs have natural tendency to pull and misbehave and look somewhere else. And I'm finally getting, after a year and a half with my little border collie Pax, who's actually sleeping here. I'll show you.
Yeah.
He's snoozing over there. If you see
him. Look.
We just had a great walk in the park, and also some on leash work. So it took me tons of time. And if if there's something that I'd like to really know for our community, and we'll have so many different questions. But the first question that comes to mind is, how do you train a dog on leash, and how do you use your harness? And are there any different ways to train, or, and what do you see are the problems as well? So number one, how do you train a dog on leash so it doesn't pull?
Really open-ended question. And I think, so that this is something that I'm really passionate about. Well, I'm really passionate about dog welfare, and that's why I started working with dogs as a whole, but more specifically about the kind of training methods that we use. So we have access to so much advice out there and through the internet as well, but there's so much conflicting advice. And so what I'm passionate about is, rather than punitive training methods that might be based on sort of dominance theory, what I want to promote and what I'm really, really passionate about is scientific-based training, which involves positive reinforcement. And the ethos of that is that we can be kind and compassionate with our dogs at all times. So that's really important. So the first thing would be to look at the way in which the methods in which you're using to train your dog. So they have to be kind and compassionate, and they also have to have your dog's best interest at heart as well. So taking more of a view of the emotional well-being of your dog. It can be quite easy to teach your dog things. It can be quite easy to reinforce your dog with food or a toy or whatever motivates it when it's by your side when you're walking. But often, if we can look at it in a little bit more of a deeper way, we should be asking, why is the dog pulling? And so often it can be down to a state of over arousal, or there can be lots of factors. Perhaps something has triggered them in the environment. They're not comfortable about something. They're feeling fearful. They had a crap morning, for example.
Maybe they're a sled dog.
Say again.
I said maybe they are a sled dog.
yeah, exactly. Well, yeah. So they've got a real reinforcement history of pulling, and they enjoy doing that. So we ought to be asking those questions first and foremost, and taking a holistic approach to the training. So yes, using food and using things that motivate your dog, and using positive reinforcement to reinforce kind of behaviors that we want, which is that the dog is walking on a loose lead and somewhere in the vicinity next to us. Yes, that's really important. But we should be also promoting a calm and relaxed lifestyle. And so the morning or the build up before the walk on that as well. And so basically looking at our dogs, making sure that actually they are comfortable in the environment when we're stepping outside of the front door. Are they relaxed? Has something triggered them to feel uncomfortable? Because that will probably promote the pulling behavior. So
Is
yeah.
your dog, does your own dog pull? Because my dog doesn't pull anymore, but it was so hard. And it was like, he was just so excited to see the world that he wanted to see everything. I was going too slow. And, so I learned that the timing, that the best way is to train dogs in an enclosed space first, where there's not too many disturbances, and just really teach them that going beside us is actually the best way to go, and teach them with the right timing of the rewards, and just doing so many different little steps. Like, my brain was virtually like cooking by the time I was done with the 10-minute session with a really good positive reinforcement trainer as well. But it sounds like we probably will have to record a video or something and show people how to actually, or maybe you already do have a video on your site, and pardon my ignorance if there's something current and I have missed it, but I really would love to see that, and I'm sure that our community would too. So maybe we should just kind of, this could be a little teaser for people to look forward to a training video, how to have dogs on leash.
Yeah, absolutely. And
go ahead. I'm so excited.
Sorry. and you're absolutely right. So looking more at the specifics, so working in little increments. And it's important to not jump ahead too quickly. So just like you say, so working on your loose lead walking in the house just for 5 or 10 minutes while the kettle's boiling, and then building up to moving towards the door, and then do some in the garden, rather than sort of jumping ahead. Because especially when you've got a young puppy, everything's so brand new, they've got so much to absorb. It can be really tempting to expose them to everything as quickly as possible and get them out, and they need exercise and all this and that, and they need to socialize. But actually, it really benefits us and it really benefits the dog if we can really go nice and slow and allow the dog or the puppy to actually sit and observe, take things in, move at their own pace. Often when we speed them up, they're not able to actually compute things properly, and that can be detrimental in the long run.
You know, I'm always concerned about the health effects of people using harnesses and leashes and collars wrong. Because I've seen so much damage of the nerves, cervical nerves that affect the front legs, and also the thyroid gland and all the important structures that pretty much supply with flow of blood, energy, and nerve flow to the organs of the body and so on. So, you know, a dog that may have stomach issues, suddenly, you know, we suddenly realize that he has a neck injury, or a dog that has issues with the heart or lungs. People don't realize that it's not just about the collar. And every time they jerk, they actually cause a problem. So I'm really grateful that you guys came up with a harness that works. And it's quite amazing. Your harness is designed in such a way that it actually has 2 attachments. Tell me about that.
Yeah, sure. So you make a good point about the collar jerking as well, and that's been like quite a popular way of training historically, and I know it still happens now. And so it's really important, and it was for us really important to get away from that, basically, create something that wouldn't damage your dog. And again, re-educate people into kinder ways of training rather than harmful ways like the collar popping and that sort of thing. The Perfect Fit harness, it has a ring on the front of the harness and on the back of the harness. So predominantly and ideally, you can just use the back ring, because really what we should be focusing on is, again, working on the training side of things, the behavior side of things, and having a dog that walks in a relaxed way next to us and they're not pulling. Sometimes for bigger, stronger dogs or caregivers who are going through training and struggling with their dog that's pulling, they can use the double-ended lead attached to front and back. It enables them to gently steer from the front or put the brake on when needed, to steer away from unwanted stimuli. So that can be a really helpful tool to use alongside your training.
Ultimately, the little rings on the harness should be kind of irrelevant, right? Because a well-trained dog should be actually walking beside us and having a good time and looking up to us and paying us the attention that we need to keep it safe and all that stuff. So it's really fun. Yes,
that's really interesting. So ideally, what would be great is to see no pressure on the harness at all. So the harness is just there as a safety measure, should anything
safety belt, seat belt in the car. It's the same thing.
Yeah. And you know, life happens. Like your dog isn't a robot. You know, a squirrel runs out in front of them. A lot of dogs will naturally want to run. So at least when we've got the harness on the dog, we know that there's not going to be some damage happening on the soft tissue if they had a collar on. So they are.
Yeah. That's great. Now, how did you start working with dogs? I know that you came to dog games about 10 years ago. Did you work with dogs before, or how did it happen?
Yeah, so I've always loved dogs, and I used to spend a lot of time in my father's veterinary practice.
Oh, wow. And your dad was a vet.
Yeah, he actually retired last week.
Oh, wow.
Which was quite a momentous occasion. So yeah, I spent a lot of time growing up in the practice with all sorts of animals. And I then went on to work as a veterinary nurse at a different practice for a few years. And then I did some other jobs, which actually were more sort of genetic breeding side of things, which ethically doesn't quite sit in line with what I believe in today, but nonetheless, it was super interesting. I remember trying to train my dad's dog at the time. It was allergic called Bobby. He was quite vocal, and so I remember thinking, I can harness this, excuse the pun, and managed to teach him to bark on command. And so that was kind of I was probably about 12, 13. That was kind of my first experience where I thought, this is really fun. I really like it. And I really like learning about the dogs and body language, etc. So yeah, fast forward to today. I've done quite a lot of training work. I don't do any outside training dogs anymore, separate of dog games, because I don't have the time. So simply focus on my role here, really. But again, going back to why I started, like, I'm really passionate about getting the message out there about emotionally focused approach to training and kind methods, as opposed to a lot of the punitive stuff that people are still doing. So that's why I do what I do.
I understand you have a dog. What's his name?
So he's called Paco. So similar to yours, you asked me earlier, actually, does he pull on the lead? And that's an interesting question because so 90% of the time he's really steady. Worked a lot on it. He is 10 now. But there are still moments, like we go somewhere new, I can see that he's becoming slightly over aroused, and those are the times when he's pulling, and I know I need to slow down and maybe go back a few steps in those kind of situations, because he's possibly not coping quite so well. He is a Rottweiler crossed with an Irish setter.
Oh, wow, cool.
So for me, like, there's nothing I enjoy more than seeing a dog that's chilled, relaxed, content. And I had hoped that he might be a bit more energetic and want to pop his head up and make an appearance, but he's in a really deep sleep. So maybe
stay with Pac, so no problem at all.
Yeah, no problem. He can just rest. So he comes to work with me every day, and yeah, he's just been my best mate for 10 years, and he is absolutely precious and spoiled and gets the best of everything, and he deserves.
He comes to work. He comes to the office.
Yeah.
Do you have any advice for our community and dog lovers about dogs, whether it's harnesses or whether it's dog well-being in general?
Yeah. I think the best thing that we can do as a duty to our dogs would be to learn about dog body language, how to read them, so that we can understand them more, understand when they might not be coping, and try and help them. So I think that would be the most important thing that I would advise. And then again, I'm like a broken record, but learn about positive reinforcement methods. Start learning. There's loads of helpful information out there at our fingertips. So if you are struggling with a behavior issue, then start opening up. Find a positive reinforcement-based trainer, and learn new things. And I guess with the kind of behavior issues that people might be struggling with, again, try and take a holistic approach to what the problem might be and how to solve it. Are all your dog's needs being met? Do they have a good diet? Are they being walked enough? Are they being walked too much and over aroused? Are you throwing the ball?
Yeah.
Are their legs sore because of the constant ball throwing? And all that side of things. Do they have constant access to water? Do they have a flat bed where they can actually fully stretch out? And all those tiny little things to look at first. Because sometimes when you can kind of fix one of those little problems or change one of them, then you can often find that another problem sort of diminishes from that. So I think my advice is to love them dearly, and they're super sentient beings, and it's our duty to give them the absolute
respect them.
And respect, yeah. And also the other thing that's really important to me from a training point of view is like choice-based learning. So they're never sort of forced into anything. And obviously we need to take into consideration like the safety parameters. We can't just let our dogs just do what on earth they want. That wouldn't be very responsible. But with safety parameters, we should be able to offer our dogs the choice to make decisions. And when they do make the right decisions, we can then reinforce them for those.
I love that you say that dogs should be able to make their own decisions to a point, right? To keep them safe, but also teach them
Yes.
that they can be responsible. And I see that in the different environments. And I find that the more restricted dogs are, the more aggressive, the more behavioral problems there are, the more time they spend on leash, the more problematic they are. Meaning that there is a time where we need to keep them safe on the street and so on. But really, like the more signs in the country or in area, the more misbehaved dogs. It's kind of crazy. So I dare to say that I've lived in Canada for 30 years, so I'm a Canadian, and I see that the desire for people to actually tell other people what to do is like great. And so dogs, there are very few off-leash dog parks, and if there are, there's still some people who will tell you put your dog on the leash, or people will be kind of having a little bit of a fit that there is a dog. I would say Prague is the most liberal, which is surprising, but there are so many dog parks, and very rarely I see any sign of any kind. And if it is, it's like a little picture of dog on a leash or dog off a leash, right? And it and the dogs are fine. It really blows
Yeah.
me away. So they're more socialized. They get a chance to do what they need to do. They sniff each other. They say hi. And if there's an aggressive dog, the owner gives a warning, say, my dog is not very good. Keep your dog away, and it's all fine, civilized. So how is it in the UK? Because I've been there with Sky, with my previous dog, once, and I knew that there were like areas where dogs were pretty welcome, and it's usually pretty good. But how is it in your area?
I think that's really interesting what you're saying, because I mean, in the UK, we're really lucky, I would say, because most places we can have our dogs off lead. I would still say though that, going back to your sort of restriction thing, the more we restrict dogs, I agree. I think the more problems we potentially create, and it's really tempting to have a lot of control over our dogs, but less is more. And looking at it like more specifically as well, one thing I'm really passionate about, amidst many things to do with dogs, is husbandry training and consent training. And so the idea is that I know a lot of caregivers and dogs struggle with having things done like nail clipping, grooming, general examinations, administering eardrops, eye drops, and that sort of thing. Yes, we can pin our dogs down and get it done. We can do that, but that's ethically, it isn't okay with me. The dogs are really uncomfortable, and also from a safety point of view, the more we restrict the dogs, the higher the risk is that they're going to pop. So are we promoting an environment where the dog could possibly bite us? And they shouldn't be pushed to that extreme.
Yeah.
So what I really love practicing is this consent game. And actually, there's a wonderful behaviourist based predominantly here in the UK called Chirag Patel. He invented something called the bucket game. I won't go into masses of detail about it, but again, it could be something we could cover another time. But it's basically a little bucket. It's a visual target for the dog, and it does have treats in it. And the dog, the idea is that when the dog's looking at that visual target, the bucket, they are ready for you to commence, let's say, looking under their ear. When the dog looks away from the bucket or orients away from yourself, you need to stop. So the idea is that you can reinforce the dog for saying, I just need a break. Just give me a moment. I'm comfortable with that. So we're giving the dog a voice. We're communicating. We're having a conversation. And when we can give the dog a voice and listen, we're promoting a really trusting relationship between the caregiver and the dog. So what I'm trying to say is when we take all of those restrictions away, we can really promote a dog that's comfortable in that environment. And it's the same, like, you're in the dentist chair and your dentist says, if you need a break, put your fist up. Okay, that's great. I've got a choice. I've got a get out clause. If it's too much, I know that I can stop it. I can have a break. Yeah. Much more empowering than the dentist saying, right, we're going to be here for 40 minutes. belt up.
Yes, I understand. Whenever I travel to Southeast Asia, like Thailand and places around there, I was really surprised that number one, dogs are loved there. Like the temperature drops down to 10 degrees Celsius, and the dogs, or 16 in the mountains, and the dogs already wear sweaters. All of them suddenly wear sweaters, and so it's one thing. But they're all kind of loose on the street, and obviously once in a while there's a little bit of a dog fight, but I haven't seen that much, and they seem to get along. And once again, I was really surprised that they can navigate traffic and they can do all that. And then you have an average Canadian dog, and like off leash, it's like a complete disaster. No recall, drama and all that.
Yeah.
And it's an interesting one. But going back to perfect fit, if it's okay. We're just back on the leash. Where do you make it? Can you tell me a little bit about the manufacturing, your philosophy of that?
Yeah, so they're all made by ourselves, and we make it here in the UK. So we've got a little factory. It's about an hour north of our HQ here. So yeah, busy. Making harnesses every day. And our production is just growing and growing and growing because the demand is just
growing. So you mean they're not made in China?
No.
I admire some of the traditional Chinese culture and all that, but we know that there's a problem with manufacturing in China, whether it's the quality and sometimes the labor laws and standards, and not necessarily supporting totalitarian regime. I don't think that's a good thing either. So I really love that they're made in the UK. I know that they're a little more expensive, but not crazy expensive. Also for the price of keeping your dog out of veterinary office because you're not going to hurt it, and you hurt the collar. So you're basically working to retire your dad, basically, to prevent dogs getting sick, and your dad could retire.
Yeah, that's it. That was my goal.
What would be it makes me kind of think of your dad and your experience in the practice. What was it like to actually? My dad was a veterinarian too, by the way. So,
okay.
Yeah. So and he didn't want me to become a vet. He wanted me to become an architect. And I said, no way, absolutely not. So I actually kind of secretly, started kind of paving my way, and then he helped me to obviously support me through the school to a point. But yeah, how was it to work with your dad, and also what was it like in the veterinary practice, and what was difficult and what was less difficult?
I loved spending time there as a kid and a teenager, and things weren't like. So I'm 34 now, nearly. Things certainly weren't.
You're lucky. Don't say that one more time.
Things are very different now to how they were back then in veterinary practices. And I remember my dad would be there of a weekend, and he wouldn't have a nurse or a helper, so I would help him. So I remember from a very early age raising veins and pinning down animals. I even remember getting bitten. It was a lovely English Bull Terrier. And my dad was always very, very laid back man. So he was always just like, yeah, you'll live, it's fine. And I also remember, when Dad used to do operations, I was always fascinated with anatomy, and if he was removing lumps and things like that, I was always really, really fascinated. And it's a bit gruesome, but he used to put it in a little kidney dish, and I'd inspect it and look at it and dissect it. And that was kind of what I got enjoyment from.
And also helping to remove that lump, right? Like we have a whole article on lumps, by the way. I would be really curious to see what you think of it, because I have a little bit of a theory. Anyway, let's go further. So that's the good part. Yeah. What is the bad part?
The bad part. I can't think of one. I suppose the only thing is, I suppose, and Dad,
Or difficult. Let's call it difficult. Let's not call it bad.
yeah, difficult. As far as I was concerned, nothing was difficult. I'm sure things were difficult for my dad, but I had a ball. But I think last week there was an article published in our local paper on my dad, because he retired, and he talked about actually the difficulties now in comparison to when he first started out, and how much more red tape there is, and it can make things quite difficult. So I think in terms of where we've come sort of legally, there's a lot to cover, a lot to be aware of, and sort of to cover your back, really. So I think that transition for my dad, from starting sort of 40 years ago ish, to now, it has been, a massive change.
Yeah, what I find, and that's been the most difficult, that as you said, the regulations and the bylaws and everything is just so much more complicated, and we are gradually losing the freedom to make a decision for our patients. While we have the degrees and the education, it has been very interesting for me to watch as well. There were more holistic practitioners 20 years ago than there are now, because everyone is basically afraid to lose their license if they do something that is not. Is that kind of the similar situation in the UK now?
And yeah, I mean, I can only speak for what I know with my dad, really. But yeah, exactly. You summed it up better than me with all the regulations and that, it does instill fear in people, are they going to lose their license? It's scary.
I always listen to some sort of book or audio book or just, I do a lot of computer work, so I don't read, but I listen, and I listen constantly in the car, or sometimes when I'm on a dog walk and Pax is off, so I just turn it on because he likes to have his little freedom. And I find that the most difficult part of life now is to really sustain our positive mindset and attitude. And I think that dogs are one of the heroes of my life and our community, because they really do that. But there's also it's an ability to learn. It's like learning to jog or swim or whatever. It's learning to kind of perceive the world in a positive way and seeing the positive things, because there's so much negativity, but when you really look at things closer, there's so much positive as well. There's always something positive in the negative. And especially in 2020 and in the era of COVID and so on, I think that it's super important to focus on the positive side of things.
Yeah.
So that's,
and I work hard to practice the same mentality as that, for sure. And there's a lot of hatred. There's a lot of hatred in the world. And I've only been here for a very, very minute period, but it sort of feels like it's getting worse. And I think there's always a positive to take from everything. I totally agree with you. And our dogs, of course, really help with that every day. But I think we've lost touch with the ability to stay compassionate with each other and respect each other, even if our views differ, even if our moral compasses differ. We can still be compassionate and have respect for each other.
Still can be friends, right? Even though I think that
Right.
You're right. Like, people sometimes think that if they disagree on a topic, that they can't be friends. And I remember about a month ago, we had a conversation with couple of friends. We were sitting at the dinner and we had a really heated debate on some topics. I can't really remember what it was, but it was so fun that we were actually able to listen to each other and then kind of laugh about it, like how ridiculous we are. We are defending our things, right? But it was still friendly. And I think that that's a really important reminder, what you're saying, that we can disagree, but we can be friends. And, I think that any, any negativity or anger or frustration or fear is actually originating from fear, right? There are few fears that we actually have, and that's one of them is to be pushed out of our group of friends or society and be alone and die alone. That's one of the fears. And the other one is probably to have no resources and not to be looked after and be on the street, right? Those are the interesting fears. And when I look at dogs, actually, they're kind of similar. I think that's what we love about them, because they really love to be part of the pack. And they also constantly, they're willing to give so much for the safety and for the home that we give them. It's kind of beautiful. That's where I think we connect dogs and humans too.
I think that subject is really interesting though, and yeah, you should be able to have good friendly debates, even if you're on two different teams. You're a meat eater, I'm a vegan, for example. And
I'm plant-based, because if I say vegan, people will.
Whatever you want to call it. Let's say our diets are different, and we should be able to keep the bridges open and create relationships. Because actually, if we are passionate about something and we do want to see change, then we're not going to achieve that by building up the walls and creating the two teams. By cultivating that relationship between the two teams, if you like, we can then maybe we will start to see some change. Maybe seeds will be planted, and that the same goes for the kind of more punitive-based trainers and the positive reinforcement-based trainers. There's a really clear divide between the two, and I do understand why I do. But we'll never see change if we stay at war. We need to be working on building relationships, if we can, with that other side, and learning about each other. If I can listen to someone, even if I don't agree with their opinion or their methods with their dog, if I can listen to them without judgment, please listen to me as well.
I have a sense, and I'm sure that you witnessed probably some online arguments about training, because I see a lot about dog nutrition and dog training. Those are the topics that really are heated often. And I find that when a certain group defends their ways, let's say a choke collar or something like that, I think that the biggest reason why they defend that choke collar is that they probably have been using it for a long time. And if they allow themselves to think that they're doing something wrong, they will feel really bad about harming their dogs. And the most important part is to ensure that we don't blame anyone for going a certain way, or don't put them down, or don't ostracize them or laugh at them, or think that their ways are bad. I think that the only way to actually make change and create change is to explain why we are doing it, right? Why don't we use collars and use harnesses instead? And why don't we use all the harnesses, but certain harnesses with a good fit? Those are such interesting topics. Is there anything else that you'd like to say before we go?
Oh no, there's loads. I'm having to really succinct. Absolutely. Listen to them without judgment, and never make someone feel blamed, because often people are doing that or jerking the collar because that's what they learned to do. They're different, and it's just about education. And not everybody's ready for education. Not everybody's ready to listen, to hear. But if we can just try and plant seeds and be as kind to those people as possible, we can make change. And going back again to how dogs are so special, I was thinking just a minute ago about authenticity, and how dogs don't pretend to be anything else other than what we see. They're not pretending to be a macho guy because they're embarrassed about losing face, for example. And actually, I think that's something that we can really learn from our dogs, is to be authentic, to be vulnerable, and to be ourselves.
Ourselves. Yeah. Yeah. It's hard. It's actually, I think that it's hard for most people. I've been just finished a book written by a psychologist. She calls herself the psychologist of psychologists. Her name is Marisa Peers. And she actually talks a lot about the authenticity and how important it is to tell ourselves every day that we are good enough for
Yeah.
whatever we do. And dogs are always good enough for themselves.
Yeah.
But then we transfer our own hangups on them, and then they start acting out, right? And
Yeah.
or acting them out. That's my ESL disability. Sometimes once in a while I just go into Chenglish, what I call. Yeah, and I'm sure. What dog walking do you have in your area? Are you by the sea or not?
No,
No.
we are in the middle of the land, otherwise known as the Midlands. And but we're very, very lucky. We live in an area of outstanding natural beauty. There's a few of those around the UK. This one is called the Malvern Hills.
I've heard of that. Malvern, Move.
Malvern.
Oh, I see. So that's different. Sorry.
So that's different, but it's beautiful. So yeah, we get to walk the hills, and there's loads of other walking areas. And it's not overpopulated. Like certainly where we live, there's not many sort of dog parks. It's quite untouched land and common land. So it's a really special place to live. We're not far from Worcester. You may have heard of Worcestershire sauce. That is where that was made.
Nice, lovely. Everyone knows that. I'll have to check that out. And everyone, thank you so much for watching our video. We had a lot of fun. I'm sure that this is not the last time we're talking. And thank you, Stephanie, for giving us so much inspiration and telling us how perfect fit happened. And for everyone who is in Canada and the US, you can get the harness on our site. And if you're in the UK or Europe, you can go to doggames.com. If you are buying the harness in the US and Canada directly from Dog Games, you can do that, but you may be subject to duty fees and all that stuff. So we're looking after that. But I'm kind of excited. I really love to make connections with like-minded people, and just talking to you and knowing that we are not alone, and that we have similar ideas and aspirations and goals to make a difference. It makes me feel really good. Thank you so much.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for having me. It's been really, really interesting. And thanks so much for all of your support with the Perfect Fit. And I'd love to do this again.
Yeah, we will. And give Paco a hug for me, okay? Take care.
Bye-bye. Take care. Bye.